Hello everybody, I'm Krasi Attasio, and today I will talk about the eclipse that will take, the partial lunar eclipse that will take place on the 16th and 17th of July, depending on your position on Earth. Now this time, we had on the 2nd of July, the eclipse which took place, which was the total solar eclipse. And this eclipse now, it's like prolongation. It's not, we cannot ignore the previous eclipse when we're talking about this one. So we need to take the two eclipses together because the influences of the first one are not over yet. So the energies of the previous eclipse that are still to be felt for approximately 3 months after the eclipse. And then we're having now the full moon, which is happening in sidereal Sagittarius Gemini axis, and this particular full moon is like prolongation of the previous eclipse, especially because they happened on the same axis, on the same place. And this eclipse is partial. And don't ignore the word partial, because I will tell you that even though it's not complete, but it's partial, in the ancient times, they would give specific importance on the partial eclipses, and they will look at the extent of the eclipse, the duration, which part of the day or night will be eclipsed. Now, according to the website of NASA, which I'm visiting when I'm looking which parts of the Earth to see the shadow of the eclipse, because this is very important, since there where the shadows go through, the influences and the energies will be felt immediately and shortly after the eclipse takes place. So this eclipse will not be seen from North America, will be seen from South America, Africa, a part of Europe, yes, I think part of Australia as well. But it is not only this that we look at specific ominous details which are very important in order to determine where the eclipse will be felt and the energies of the eclipse. Now, also, there's a lot happening, and as I told you, we can't look only at this eclipse when we'll be analyzing worldwide on mundane level what will be the results, because we had too many events which are like a chain of events, celestial events, and what above so below, what is happening above will certainly result in events below. And like it comes in my mind all the time, this particular event which happened in April when the cathedral in France, the cathedral of Notre Dame, was on fire, and we know how the fire, what symbolic meaning the fire has, about purification, about level of consciousness, about awakening. And then this stays in my mind. It's an event which is significant. And then now in July, we had the eclipse happening on the axis of Sagittarius Gemini, which is continued by the partial eclipse that is taking place on the same axis. So we have chain of events that is very important. I don't want to talk only about consciousness, because this would mean that I will avoid talking about specifically on mundane level what this eclipse would mean. But it is consciousness and it is awakening, because when we go through hardship, even forget astrology, but isn't it so that when we go through hardship, we always end up uplifting our consciousness? So this eclipse is not easy, and it can't be easy because a lot is happening. Before I share my screen with you, just 2-3 words more to tell you. It's not enough to see where the shadows passes from. We saw the previous eclipse was seen mainly from Chile, Argentina, and as we said, and as I also said in my previous video, the eclipse resulted in different natural disasters. Now this eclipse will have very bad impact on the agriculture, that is for sure, because of this particular watch where the eclipse is taking place, because we divide the day and the night into parts, and wherever the eclipse takes place, this particular part is responsible for countries, but not only, it's responsible for specific issues or specific problems, so to say, that the eclipse can lead to. Now, the eclipse is happening in a month, in the Babylonian month of Duz, and the Babylonian month of Duz is responsible for Akat, and this would say that not only the eclipse will be visible from Europe, but Europe will experience the influences of this eclipse. And how this can happen, I need to share my screen now with you. Look, this time and also previous time with the previous eclipses, we have this axis, sidereal axis of Sagittarius, Gemini afflicted by the eclipses. And what is this? When we have the sign of Sagittarius afflicted, well, this is the sign of abundance. This is the sign of all these beautiful blessings of Jupiter. And then we're having the sign of Gemini, which is about markets, communication. And look what is happening. We are having the eclipse taking place on the 29th degrees of Sagittarius. First of all, here I need to tell you that we should not forget, I always keep this in mind for myself, that we are living in the mini era of Aries, of Mars. So we cannot expect, and this is mini era is due, and I explained this also previously, is due to the precession of the equinoxes and the which actually emphasize in which particular dodecatemoria the world on mundane level is. And since we are now ruled by the dodecatemoria, which is the division of the zodiacal signs, and it is a part or dodecatemoria of Pisces, which is ruled by Aries, we know that we live in the mini era of Aries, of Mars. Therefore, we cannot expect to live in completely peaceful environment, and hostilities and aggression is part of our world, and this is not surprising to no one. So we live in such era of Mars. And also the eclipse is happening in a on the Tuesday, on a day of Mars. So we have a very powerful Martian presence. Mars is ruling, and we also have the eclipse happening. As you can see, this particular section is also ruled by Mars, and the moon is with Pluto, and all this is very deep. Actually, Pluto, we know what is the meaning of Pluto, but not only this. It is another very important thing before I become more specific. So we have here the sign of Gemini, of the markets, the sign of communication, trade, money, and we have Saturn, which is in Gemini. And Saturn is not simply sitting in Gemini and being retrograde. No, Saturn is in very specific heliacal phase, which is very destructive. Apart from being retrograde, Saturn is destructive, and he is very actively staying in the sign of Gemini, and he is during the eclipse in very exact 2 degree opposition with Venus. And what is Venus? What is Venus doing during this eclipse? Well, Venus is disappearing in the rays of the sun. Venus becomes invisible. And what is Venus? Love, money. Venus is about beauty, it's about happiness, it is about joy. And Saturn is literally, Venus disappears, and with this disappearance, she's taking with her those evident love, money, beauty, and she becomes different. She becomes deep, she becomes not that joyful, she becomes very esoteric, and she's then not that she's not this pure, visible joy anymore, and love and money, and is heavily afflicted by Saturn. I will give you an example. If a person is born on this particular day, this would mean that this person will have issues with the love life, most probably financial issues as well, and will be searching love, and will have issues with finding a life partner and love and this. So what is happening is that with this eclipse, ominously, Venus is disappearing. Saturn is in a powerful phase. And who is Saturn? Saturn can be the government, Saturn can be rulership, Saturn can be a lot. And Saturn is afflicting the markets, it's afflicting money, it's afflicting the love life of many people. So you may experience this on many levels, and I will tell you how this will work on mundane level. On personal level, this would say that for a period of about 3 to 6 months, you may experience difficulties in your own business. It would be so that you may need, especially if you have this powerful axis on your chart, like sidereal ascendant Sagittarius or descendant Sagittarius or midheaven Sagittarius, Gemini, or this would be, so if you have this happening, it would say that you may experience this, that you may need in your private life, in your private business, you may need to add structure, analytical skills, high moral values in order to maintain good business. Spirituality, intuition, all this may need to come into power if you want to maintain a healthy, good business. And also relationship. Since Venus is disappearing, this would say that also in your private life, you need to become very sensitive, very loving, do additional efforts to maintain good, healthy, private, romantic relationship. And it's not only this, we have many, actually everything will be invisible on the sky. Look how ominous. Venus, invisible. Mercury retrograde, not visible. Mars, invisible. So we have 3 so important planets, and all 3 take active part in this eclipse, and none of them can be seen with the naked eye. It doesn't mean that they're not existing, but it means that we will not be able from our perspective to see them. Mercury is the markets and it's retrograde. On mundane level, this will heavily afflict the markets, and with Saturn slowly, so slow, together with Pluto, staying in the sign of Sagittarius, this will be devastating for the markets. You saw what happened after the previous eclipse. I told you that the markets will suffer, and this is exactly what happened. They were volatile. They started after the eclipse, the markets opened with like a balloon. They started with some rise, good results, and then suddenly they started to drop again. And this will be the model that will continue. Heavily afflicted markets, especially after this eclipse. And not only the eclipse, but Venus, which is the money. And Venus is in a such declination now that she is really pointing towards recession and a world problem in the world economy. And I always have with me, when such thing is happening, the chart of America and in the UK. And actually this eclipse is eclipsing, like the previous one, the sun of America and Venus, and they rule the seventh house is ruled by Venus of the chart of America, and this will deepen problems with partners of the states. And also, if you remember in the previous eclipse and the eclipse before that in January, I was telling, much before the issues with America and Iran and China and the trade wars were outlined. I was saying this because I was using the ancient Babylonian tools and I was in techniques for analyzing eclipses, and I was telling you that there will be a problem between America and Iran and China, and these problems now will be deepened after this particular eclipse. Maybe we will be seeing some sort of temporary justice in different ways after January 2020, after Saturn moves into his own sign. But up until then, what is happening? Saturn is the powerful leadership. Saturn is the king, and he is opposing Venus in Gemini. And with this, I see this as a new measures of suppressing communication, censorship of communication. So in this sense, this eclipse will be devastating because you will see literally overnight how the censorship measures on every social media will be increased, and how the economy and the markets will be afflicted very, very heavily after this eclipse. Very possibly the price of the crude oil will rise due to the existence of Pluto, but these are also very volatile markets right away. If I look at the chart of the UK, which I also have always at hand when such powerful event is happening, look what is happening. Now we are having this eclipse happening on the natal moon of the UK, and this is not the first eclipse which is eclipsing the moon of the UK this year, and this can deepen, and it will not make easy the situation with Brexit. It's not going to be solved overnight. It's going to become even more complex, and this is also because the NATO Saturn of you see how interesting the NATO Saturn of America and also the UK are squared by the influences of the eclipse and also by Saturn. So we have crisis of the government, crisis of the leadership, crisis of the markets in the two countries, in America and in the US, and crisis with the partnerships for both of them. Also because the Venus is ruling the ascendant of the UK, and particularly the economy of the UK will be suffering after this particular very ominous eclipse. Now, look, we have eclipses every day, every year. More than two eclipses definitely per year. This year we'll have 4. I think we had 2 in January, we're having 2 now, and I'm not sure. I think that the next eclipses will be now in January 2020. So we have eclipses, and this is not a miracle that we suddenly have another eclipse, but this eclipse is having a lot to happen, and it's ominous, and we have all these invisible planets, very vulnerable situation related to bad economy, related to earthquakes, especially over the countries where the shadows of the eclipses passed, hostilities and terrorism, because I will tell you another thing. Mars is too near the belly of Cancer, and this is a very stormy place. Mars there is not happy. His detriment, heavily detriment and unpredictable. All this is about hostilities and terrorism. And also, let me say that these degrees by the ancients are called stormy. So it's a stormy place. It is not to give you this not very pleasing prognosis it is for good. It is like what we said with the previous eclipse. When you know that it will be raining, you're taking your umbrella. So this is the meaning of my words, and also to tell you that there are measures. There are certainly measures when there is an eclipse or any event that is not positive, and the measures are known since very, very ancient times and are known to every culture, not only in Babylon. If you see the Indian Vedic culture, they have amazing mantras, and they would be chanting, and they would really address the planet which is difficult in order to reverse the effects of certain celestial event. In this case, I see Saturn, not only the eclipse, but because Saturn takes powerful part in this eclipse, I see him as a major player. And I would say that it also with this eclipse, it is Saturn whom we need to address with mantras according to your own culture or your intuition, in order to reverse the effects of the eclipse. If the ancients said, and I trust only them, that there are means to reverse effects of the eclipse, it means this is possible with high vibrational level that we can maintain through moral values, through saying the truth, through being very disciplined, not harming others, and of course prayers, addressing the divine, addressing the creator, the planetary spirits. All these are tools to reverse some bad effect of what is happening on the sky. So don't take my words with fear. No place for fear. It's place for action, for being very conscious of what is happening. And definitely, maybe I'm repeating myself, it's not advisable to look at the eclipse, to watch the eclipse, even though the media can tell you, oh, go, it's beautiful, go and see the eclipse. No, don't see the eclipse. And also, it is very good not to eat or not to expose your food like open when the eclipse is taking place. And you can easily see for your, because it's different, I cannot name this, but I'm simply visiting the website of NASA, and then I'm looking at the timelines of the different countries where the eclipse is going to take place. Another thing I wanted to say, because we spoke about Saturn, the star, important, but Mars is also not to be underestimated, because it's detriment, because it's in the belly of Cancer, because it's invisible. Mars is the star of Elam. Elam in the ancient Babylon is representing some Asian countries. It is especially Iran, because if you look at the chart of Mesopotamia, Elam were the lands of the contemporary Iran. The star of Iran becomes invisible. So I hope I'm not right, but I'm saying this already, I think, since the beginning of this year, that the issues with Iran and with China, will, especially with Iran, will be deepened. So this is how I see the energies of the eclipse influencing us. So look at this in a positive way, like think of, if you look at your own chart, see how this is influencing you, and do your own spiritual, small ritual to reverse the effects. And I am more than sure that since the ancients did, we also can. And I've been witness that we actually can, with prayers, with the right attitude, and let your intuition lead you. It is the information and the knowledge is power. And therefore, I shared with you my point of view. Thank you for your attention.